when you first read the script, it reminded you of the writing of your good friend Horton Foote. What was that quality that you found similar?
Well, kind of, rural, kind of, I don't know, very poignant and humane and human in certain ways, through the characters. It just kind of reminded me some of. I wanted him to see it, but he didn't live long enough to see it. In fact, he died one day when I was giving that final speech. We got the word that he had just died at that moment. Very strange.
His family saw it though, recently, didn't they?
Yeah. His daughter and son-in-law saw it the other night. I think they enjoyed it very much. Yeah. We didn't talk too much about what it was like her dad's work, but I felt somewhat it was like her dad's work. I mean, I think he would have enjoyed it very much, Horton, had he lived to see it.
You can't have a funeral if you're not, deceased.
Hold on now. It's a detail. We can look at it.
Pretty big detail.
You want to have a funeral party while you're alive so you can go.
Yes or no?
Yes. Buddy, get some paper. We need to make a list of who Mr. Bush wants to invite.
Now, sit down there. I want everybody to come who's got a story to tell about me.
All right, say again?
Probably covers about 4 counties.
Then I want 4 counties worth of people at the party.
Well, sir, the thing is, how do you invite people? How do you get people to come tell stories about you that I'm guessing might get them, shot? You know what? Don't worry about it. You go on ahead. Don't worry about it. We'll come up with something. A couple of ideas just came to me. Like what?
Tell me about that big climactic moment in the film, which, as you were shooting it, you got the call about his death. But what is it like to shoot those scenes? Did you sense an extra kind of pressure to deliver in those moments, because it is kind of the climax of the film and that character?
We did it in one take. They put up 3 cameras in one take, and I had kind of lived with those words for a while, and when we vacationed in northern Argentina over Christmas, I would sit and look out at the Andes Mountains and work on that, and it gave me a sense of solitude and peace and quietness, So when I finally did it, it was very much a part of me. So I didn't feel any pressure or anything like that. I felt just this was the time for that.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about your process and your preparation when you receive a script. Do you feel that it's changed at all or evolved at all since you started?
Well, I guess there's similarities, I suppose. I think that I'm more offhand now about it and a little more relaxed, and I don't worry about if there's an emotional scene to be dealt with. It doesn't bother me as much. I know that it'll happen. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Sometimes not that I plan it particularly, but I figure if I want something important to happen, that if it happens, it's going to be on my terms, and I'm not going to tell the director or other actors that I might do it necessarily. So, there's different ways that it can go, and I let it go. I let a scene go in the way it seems to go logically. And I'm a little more relaxed maybe with the whole process than I was in the beginning of my career.
Well, you come from Sanford Meisner training, and that kind of specified living in the moment.
Yeah, I think anybody who trains or works with anybody, they stress that. Yeah, I think that was stressed when it's been so long since I was at the neighborhood playhouse. That was emphasized definitely at that point, as I remember.
Yeah. Is there a moment when you feel, take for instance your character in Get Low, is there a moment that you feel that you've got the character?
Yeah, I felt that going in. You know, we put on Kenny Diaz put on a brilliant beard, and you know, you inch along, and you know, I feel it. I feel it wasn't foreign to me. If I had to, not that I worked for that. It could be an offshoot or an echo of one of my uncles or my father's people from Virginia, kind of. You know, not that I worked for that, but I didn't feel that there was something that foreign to me that I couldn't just reach out and grab it.
Right. But you've played such a variety of characters, and I want to ask you about a couple of them. But in finding the character, is there usually one key to unlocking what that character is? For instance, say someone like Stalin.
Oh boy, yeah. But Stalin, it was tough because we filmed over there within the Kremlin, and that was the toughest, but in a way, strangely rewarding. There wasn't much footage on him. I actually kind of went with the rhythm and speech pattern of one of my old landlords in New York City. You know, who had been from the Ukraine, who detested Stalin, but you know, I kind of went from that and built on that. You know, that was I really in a strange way I enjoyed it very much playing Stalin.
You're fantastic in it. And another film that I really love that you're in is Wrestling Ernest Hemingway.
Well, what I did with that was I got 3 guys I put on tape, Cuban guys, and I would only go to Cuban restaurants. I would only eat Cuban food, Cuban dessert, and only hang around with Cuban people to try to get a sense of that, you know. Terry Gilliam has approached me to play Don Quixote in his next film, if they get the financing. Had I never done that part, he would have never offered me the part of Don Quixote. But that was a very rewarding. I worked very hard on that part of in Wrestling Ernest Hemingway. I liked it very much.
Yeah, it's terrific. It's terrific. I want to ask you a couple of questions about some of these films, which are iconic. Starting with the obvious, The Godfather 1 and 2.
Right.
Was Godfather 2, was that a different experience for you than the first?
In what way? How you mean, like the whole working process?
The working process, because obviously the first one was riddled with kind of chaos from studio interference, and Coppola was on shaky ground, and yeah.
Yeah, well, but see, the thing with the first one was much more fun than the second one, because Jimmy Caan was on it. Jimmy, and he was a lot of jokes and fooling around. Coppola would say, "Come on, guys, we got to be serious now." But we were always fooling around, which was good, which gives you a relaxation on the set, you know. Yeah. So actually, the first one was more fun, and the second one was a terrific film. But you know, it was more down to business, so to speak. You know, we did it up there in Lake Tahoe and places like that. But each one, you know, they were both such terrific films. Wow.
Did you have, when you create a character like a Tom Hagen, and obviously you weren't part of the third Godfather, but do you kind of imagine a life beyond the film for that character? Do you have an imagination of where his character went to after part 2?
Well, you usually think of before, but yeah, you could somewhat after, yeah. You think more in the present, though, because I had a friend of mine, Louis Cosentino, who from East Harlem, he didn't know him well, but Carmine Tremonti was kind of the guy who was one of those 5 families in New York, and he said there was a guy that was like a high-paid gopher that followed him around and lit his cigarette, pulled his chair out, a position that couldn't be demeaned by others, but that was it. So that I kind of went from that, gave me the key, kind of like a mafia version of a, I don't know, a FBI guy falling around, not FBI guy, but you know, like somebody falling around a president, being a gopher for them, you know. So that was like a key to me, you know, and hanging around and being in New York, that you kind of sop up that atmosphere.
Right.
But you know, you just go. You don't intellectualize it too much. You think about it, but it's more you go with instincts and nice little stories you hear that kind of spurs you on in kind of in a fun way, you know, in an enthusiastic way.
Mm-hmm. I have a couple of listener questions for you, and actually, a couple of them involve Mr. Foote and your work with him.
Right.
One of our listeners, Dean, wants to know. He says, "I still think one of your best performances is from Tomorrow, which was by Horton Foote. Is there still a lot of Foote's work that hasn't hit the screens, and are there any plans for you as producer or actor to make those a possibility?"
No, none at all. None at all. I love the plays off Broadway recently that I saw. The Orphan. That was just brilliant. 9 hours. We sat through 6 hours and then 3 another day. I still don't know if they're going to film them or not. But no, and like I had said to someone before, if I'd only had a career with Foote's work and with what I did with Coppola, it would have been a wonderful mini career. I've had many more. But those two guys, it was terrific. And Horton was, how many people he was a friend for 50 years. How many people you have for friends for 50 years? Whatever they can put on film of Horton's is great. Hallie Foote, his daughter, maybe she has plans. I don't know. I would certainly hope so. Yeah,
I know that one of your favorite role is Augustus in Lonesome Dove.
Yes.
Tell me about what makes that character and the arc of that character particularly special to you.
Well, it's the kind of guy that said, he loved to be with whores, he had his own respect for women. He said, how come we killed off all the people that were so interesting to begin with? And you had 6-7 hours to develop the guy. He was just a very unique kind of guy, and it was special. I was fortunate in the last part of the 20th century to be in the two biggest film epics in American history, Godfather 1 and 2 and Lonesome Dove, And I walked into the dressing room one day, and on the Lonesome Dove, I said, boys, we're making the Godfather of Western.
I walked this earth my whole life with my pride, see. Now, if that's lost, then let the rest be lost with it, because there's certain things my vanity won't abide.
Well, I guess you're going to want a fancy funeral too, ain't you?
I've been thinking of that. I have a favor to ask you, and I'll do you a favor in return.
What favor?
I want you to bury me down yonder, Clara's orchard.
Clara's orchard? I don't recall seeing she had one.
You remember that little grove of pecans by the creek we stopped at back in Texas?
Back in Texas? You want me to haul you back to Texas? Well, we just got to Montana.
I know where we just got to, Woodrow. I'm the one dying here, ain't I?
Well, I imagine Clara'd be glad to give you a place in that little family cemetery she's got there. That'd make you feel better.
You mean you'd bury me next to that dumb horse trader she was married to? Hell, why didn't you just throw me out the window right now and be done with it?
Texas.
Yes, Texas. That's your favor to me, and that's my favor to you, too. I'm giving you a reason to go off on another adventure so you don't get bored being a ranger, which you ain't one anyway.
You're one of a kind, Augustus. We're going to miss you.
Even you?
Even me.
Actually, the novel was so great. My ex-wife said I read a novel I like better, as good or better than Dostoevsky. It was a great novel, and we tried to come up to that. The Godfather novel was average, and he went beyond it. I think that overall, The Godfather was, from A to Z, was more fully realized. But as you use the word, the overall arc of Lonesome Dove just carried it, and it's like the Bible in Texas. Other places too, but from Canada down, I hear gauchos watch it in Argentina. But in Texas, it's really like the Bible for people. Families gather and watch it each year for like the 20th time, so it's really special there.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I know of people that watch it several times a year, and they adore it. They get a lot out of it, and it's
yeah. My wife from Argentina, she still hasn't seen it. Maybe it's too long.
Really?
Maybe someday. I say after I'm gone, Yeah.
But you kind of came to prominence in that 70s era of kind of the auteur filmmaker. We had a lot of brave, daring voices like the Coppolas, and you were with Peckinpah and Sidney Lumet and several terrific directors.
And Robert Altman.
Absolutely, yeah. What do you think about the quality of motion pictures today and that kind of the voice of the auteur filmmaker, the renegade filmmaker?
I guess it's outside the establishment now. Then it was inside the establishment. A film like Get Low would fit very well into the 70s. It holds its own, I feel. And it's my wife's favorite film I've done since The Apostle 15 years ago. And but going back to then, it's like now it's like it's easier to raise $100 million than it is $10 million, and the $100 million movie may go down the drain anyway, in the back of their minds. So the big action and all that, but it's like what was in the system in the 70s seems to be outside the system now, and people making independent films. There will always be that, and in other countries, I saw a film about it's about a year or two old. I saw it about 4 months ago. La Nana, the Maid from Chile, beautiful movie. What a beautiful! It fit into any era, I don't know if it won awards, but it was better than some of these films that win these foreign awards. So that anybody that can pick up a camera any place in the world can make a movie. That wonderful little movie, The Apple, about the 17-year-old girl from Iran. I love that movie. So, anybody can do it. So it's open for all. Going into the 21st century, it's a real, hip, open medium for all to pursue.
And that's a beautiful thing. But at the same time, you have people like just what you mentioned earlier, Terry Gilliam, a true kind of visionary filmmaker that has to scrape by to find any money for his movies.
Yes, and I just read a script recently that he wants to do soon. I don't know if he can. Billy Bob Thornton's written a script about the South. I tell people he put Tennessee Williams in the back seat. It is so brilliant, this script. So hopefully he gets the money for that, Oh,
I hope so.
We'll see.
So when you watch one of your films, and maybe Get Low is too fresh in your mind, but when you go back and watch your films, can you watch them objectively and separate yourself from the process of making it?
I guess so. I guess I can. I don't go back and watch a lot of my films. I see them once, maybe twice, and that's it. Some of them I haven't seen. Most I have seen once. I guess I can do that and seeing maybe the growth, hopefully. And but sometimes when I see myself on TV, I'll pass over it. I don't want to see it. I'm superstitious. Maybe if it was good, maybe it's changed and it's not good in the years. So it depends on it depends on the film, and maybe someday I'll sit down with some of them and watch them again, and take the time to do that. Maybe if I do the Terry Gilliam thing, I'll sit down and watch Wrestling Ernest Hemingway. The accent will be a little different, but still be a Latin guy,
Right. You're in Texas now. You're shooting a film.
Yeah, I'm going to start a film next week with the same young man that was such he's talented, little Lucas Black that was in, and he's actually a scratch golfer. I don't think there's ever been a movie about golf where the actor could really hit the ball. I mean, really well. This kid plays in tournaments all over the place. He's wonderful. So it's kind of a movie about golf, kind of a faith-based movie. It's a nice, very nice story called 7 Days in Utopia from a book. So I'm looking forward to doing it. We just got here the other day. I like Texas a lot. But when we got here from California, it was just as hot here as it is in Virginia. My Lord.
Yeah. It's I'm in Florida, and it's burning up here. So and outside of that, the possibility of the Terry Gilliam film and the Billy Bob Thornton film, and lots of possibilities out there.
Yeah, and maybe an outside possibility. There's a brilliant script, The Hatfields and the McCoys by Eric Roth, that maybe. And then there's another wonderful script, like a latter-day version of The Guy in Lonesome Dove, that's been around for a while. The same writer that did the adaptation, and a young French director is obsessed with doing it. A Texas project, so why not? Called The Night in Mexico. sensational character. My Lord, it's wonderful. So, you know, there's some wonderful things now, as good as ever, but it's the matter of the financing. It's difficult to find these days.
Well, I can't wait to see those come to fruition, and I think the world of your work. It's meant a lot to me in my life, and I thank you so much for it.
Well, thank you, Jay. I appreciate the call, sir.
Really exciting to talk to Matthew Broderick. I've been wanting to talk to him for a long time. You know and love him, of course, from films like WarGames and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Lady Hawk, Biloxi Blues, Glory, Election, and the Broadway and cinematic incarnations of The Producers. But in recent years, Matthew's cultivated an assortment of some of the most interesting characters of his career in a series of daring, independent films. And his new one is titled Wonderful World, in which he plays Ben Singer, a world-class pessimist who eventually feels the rumblings of happiness and hope in the form of Sanaa Lathan. The movie is now available on video on demand, Amazon, and Xbox Live.
So whenever I'm in LA, I see him, and whenever he's in New York, and so when he wrote it, I've always enjoyed him, and I was, if anything, I was worried if I wouldn't like it or something, but I really did like it, and he thought he'd finally written something that he thought was a good part for me. So I just responded to it. I thought it was very funny and and thoughtful and a little bit romantic maybe, and I just thought it was a very good part.
Yeah.
And I just like Josh's writing. He's very smart and very funny. And
I know your affinity for the theater, your love of the theater. I'm thinking that one of the reasons why actors love working in theater has to be the immediacy of the audience, the interaction.
Yeah.
And I would think the closest you get with a film, particularly an independent film, would be on the festival circuit. So when you talk to the audiences that watch this movie,
right.
When you've seen screenings of it, what are they responding to in it, do you find?
I'm not sure. They seem to root for the guy to become less unhappy or negative or whatever you want to call it. Pessimistic. It's a sort of a subtle thing, but I think everybody wants him to kind of get out of his funk or his little apartment or his horrible job and do better.
Yeah.
And I think it's also it's sort of satisfying that it doesn't all end up perfectly either. So it's kind of believable. It's just somebody sort of making a step toward a better mood or a better life.
Yeah.
And I don't know, they seem to sort of believe the characters. They they don't question any of it that I could tell, and I think they like the relationship with the daughter.
Your character is the ultimate pessimist. But how do you not come across tedious or infuriating? Yeah. How do you keep the audience on your side and rooting for you?
Well, I don't know. There's a line in the movie that inside every pessimist beats the heart of a disappointed optimist or something like that. I forgot what. But it's really just that he's had some disappointments, I think. I don't think he's deeply pessimistic, actually. I also personally do think positive thinking gets too much play. That everybody has to feel positive all the time can be very draining. I think you want to feel accurately about things, You should be aware when things are not right or not going well. So when everybody keeps telling you, as long as you feel good, if you pretend to be happy about it, it'll be all right. I get very tired of that.
Yeah.
So I sympathize with him saying, that positive thinking is it's a scourge to him. I mean,
I know that
think accurately. I think.
Right. I know that this is. This is a fascinating character, and you've done so many indelible characters in your career, and it seems that you've kind of made a move into doing more and more independent movies in recent years, like this one. Do you find them more actor-friendly at all, or more conducive to creativity?
Sometimes. Potentially. I mean, honestly, I wish this had been a big budgeted studio movie and been the same. You know, I mean, it's nice to have all that time, and you know, we shot in 22 days, and I mean, for me at this point in my career, independent parts have been much better than the ones I get offered in studio things.
Right.
So that move has been put on me a little. You know, I wouldn't want to just say I decided to just do independent movies. But on the other hand, you do have a little more. It seems like freedom to be original, or to be. I mean, for a writer, you know, to tell a small story. I mean, that there's no big hook in it exactly. It's just a kind of personal story, really, about Josh, I think.
Right.
And those are hard to make when there's a huge amounts of money at stake. Although that said, even when there's a little money at stake, everybody sure does have opinions. I mean, that doesn't go away.
Oh yeah.
You know.
You say that it was shot in 22 days, and I'm wondering,
so.
is there a value in that speed or that pace for you as an actor?
Yes, I think so. I mean, obviously, you know, you have to get lucky. Like, if you don't have time to fix things, so it's not always good.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's nice because you don't have as much time to overthink things, and you have to just sort of trust yourself and trust the material and trust the director. I mean, there's not too much time to question things or to overly cover things and then edit them like crazy, so it's a little more lifelike.
Yeah.
You know, you have to sort of make a decision and go with it.
Well, I would think, too, concerning the trust issue, that being directed and working from a script by your good friend Josh has to help, because you have that built-in rapport. Yeah.
Yeah, he told me when I'm doing interviews to keep bringing up the shorthand of friendship.
Right.
That's the phrase he wants me to use. But, yes, thank God it was very, you know, we have basically exactly the same sense of humor. We both grew up in the same period in New York. And him near Columbia and me in the Village, which is almost the same thing. And so we have a very similar frame of reference. But that said, you can also get in trouble with friends, too, you know, because there's all sorts of other things play into it. You're not just talking about the work. You're talking about, you don't have any right to tell me what to do. You know, there's all different layers can happen. Yeah. But luckily with Josh, we were able to be professional, or relatively professional, and then right after we'd shoot, we had a little apartment. We were in an apartment complex off the side of a highway, an extended, you know, businessman hotel. I don't know what it was, but our apartments were across the walkway from each other. So after we have a beer after work, so we even if we didn't agree on something, we always were friends by the end of the shooting days.
Yeah, that's nice. It's always good if you remain friends at the end.
Definitely. Particularly when you're in a very isolated part of Shreveport where you don't know a soul.
Let me ask you just a couple of quick questions about the craft of what you do, because reading previous interviews with you, I understand that you don't consider yourself, you know, quote unquote, very, very method. But when you look at a script, what's the work that you do to make it real for you?
Well, it depends on the thing, but I mean, if it's something very foreign to me, I might have to, you know, learn about some subject, you know, the Civil War or something like that. But if it's most of that, I find has been done by the writer, so I don't do a lot of like research type stuff. I know some actors do. I basically try to understand the story as well as I can, and if there's something I don't understand, I try to figure it out, and I'll ask anybody, and I try to get to a point where all the scenes are as active as possible, where I know what it is I'm doing. Not to sound like acting school, but you have to be doing something, not just sitting there. I have to be aware of what my intention, some people call it, or what's happening in a very alive way at the moment in that scene. So I want to find those moments throughout the whole thing if I can.
But your father, I'm thinking of your father. He was an amazing actor, and you've worked with so many greats in your career, Brando and Hoffman and Connery and on and on and on.
Yeah.
Is there a single lesson or observation that has, when you've been working with these people or from your father, that you found most useful or meaningful to you in your career?
I don't know if there's a single one. I remember my father once, when I auditioned for something and didn't get a part, and I was really disappointed. And he said, "You always think you didn't get it because you always say I blew it or something." And he said, "How do you know they didn't blow it? Because they don't know any more than you, and they choose the wrong person all the time."
Yeah.
So that was kind of a relief to me. That the people on the other side of the desk don't know any more than you know.
Right.
That was good for starting out. And then, I don't know about acting. You learn from watching people. The one thing in common with all those people you mentioned is they all, no matter what they say, they work really hard.
Right.
They might all say, "This is bullshit, who cares?" But they all really try, and they all get really mad when things don't go well and really happy when they go well. Like, they all care about it. A lot.
And when you're talking about the satisfaction that you get from performing, has that changed or matured over the years for you since when you first started?
Yes, I think to some degree. I think when I was starting out, I could sort of think of it like a hobby, which was nice. I thought, I'll do this for a while, and if it doesn't work out, I'll do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And but as you get older, you have to be careful of a creeping desperation, to kind of. I know I can't suddenly do something else for a living now, probably. So
right.
I feel slightly more. But it also changes year by year. Like, I just did a play that I had a really great time in, and I felt like I knew what I was doing, and I felt like I was a good actor, and so I feel very revived. But for about a year before that, I felt like I'm just basically getting worse every year, and this stinks. And I think I guess that's my age.
But does theater kind of revive you?
Yeah, it kind of just made me feel good again. And actually, this movie I feel good about. But I've had a few where I didn't feel so good, and I mean, it's very subjective. But when I was younger, I don't think I cared so much about the result. I just was moving on to the next thing, and I don't know.
Well, I want to, before I let you go, because I know you're on the clock here. You mentioned that play, and I think that play was written by your other friend, Kenny Lonergan, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with Margaret? I've been reading about this for years. What's happening with it?
You should call him. I don't know. I'm in it. It's very close to done. I've seen it. It's been very close to done for a long time. There are now legal issues, which I'm not qualified to go into, but I don't know what I think there's a hope that it could come out this year, but it has been it's been very problematic for him to get finished. Not all because of him, I'm not saying, but it's been very hard to finish. Although if you saw the movie, you'd say, well, that seems finished.
Yeah.
Like it's really close. It's just they can't agree on the last 20% or whatever.
Well, I can't wait to see it. And I love you and everything you do, and I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Yeah, you'll like that movie because he's a great writer. Really
he's one of the best. I can't wait to see it.
I agree.
Let's do this. Armand Assante. What words come to mind when you think of Armand Assante, Jerry?
Badass.
I won't lie to you, man. No. He, before, a couple of years before Warren Beatty played Bugsy, I would have to say, like, his little part in The Marrying Man, I mean, the highlight of the movie, but he plays Bugsy Siegel. Just one of those great, like, really small roles, but leaves a lasting impression. But he's been in a lot of movies, a lot of great movies that I like, The Mambo Kings. He's just a really good actor. Private Benjamin I grew up with, and Prophecy. So he's been all over the place. A lot of different kind of movies too. A lot of different kind of roles, and he's a fascinating actor.
Q&A.
Q&A is one of the best, I think.
Personally. One of the great 80s Lumet films.
Yes.
And Gotti.
Gotti, he's the quintessence. He's like who I think of as John Gotti. So I mean, he's great.
Yeah, we talk about all of that, including his new film, The Line, co-starring Andy Garcia and Ray Liotta. We've talked about the film a little bit earlier, an earlier show with the screenwriter. There was a closing film this past weekend of the New York Latino International Film Fest, and you'll be seeing it making the rounds more and more as the weeks and months pass. It's a very good film, and he's very passionate about that project as well. And as he is with so many topics that we discuss in this conversation. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Armand Assante. I read something interesting about you, and I don't know if it's an erroneous quote or not, but I believe that music was your first passion, and actually you said that acting was a very arduous art form for you to get into. Why was that the case?
I think because music, as a boy, it just came intuitively very, very easy to me. When I started to seriously act in the theater, it was not what I would call necessarily as simple a pursuit as I thought it would be, because I had a great instinct for acting. But I worked for 10 years in the theater before I made a film, and I think acting, unlike music is a very liberating experience, and I think acting is psychologically a very consuming endeavor. So for me, music was just incredibly liberating, and I found that acting, although I love storytelling, but it certainly is not nearly as liberating as music, and because of the complexity of different behavioral issues and patterns you have to explore, it's one of the most challenging things that I found to do in my life, certainly.
I think I spoke to, or we spoke to, I believe it was Joe Pantoliano, who said that at the beginning of his career, acting was very difficult for him and arduous, as you're describing, because he had the need to throw in everything but the kitchen sink, to kind of overanalyze. But as time went on and his career advanced, he became a much more efficient actor, and he learned how to pick his battles with his characters. Does that speak to you at all?
Very much, and essentially, the task is really a part of storytelling, and the process of developing anything is just an absolute joy, as long as you love to tell stories and want to investigate stories with people, and I predicate a lot of my life and the great experiences that I've had really to do with people. The beauty of acting is that you are always in relationships.
Right.
And it's very powerful in that if you're working in a creative relationship, it's not necessarily as emotionally innovating as a love relationship.
Yeah.
It's just a creative relationship.
Even so, I want to ask you about some of those creative relationships, and then I know that Jerry and I both had some questions about movies as well.
Quick question about, just because we're talking about the acting, I just want to know, do you still look at it as a blessing and a curse? Because at one time you were quoted, as a profession, you don't recommend it at all. Do you still feel that way?
Well, I say that only to novices that in a way have a very Pollyannic view of the life of an actor. It is one of the most precipitous professions one could ever attempt to be part of, short of being a professional athlete. I mean, it is a highly unpredictable circumstance,
right.
and I think if you have the fortitude to live with that kind of insecurity and know within your heart the reasons you do it, I think it can have tremendous upside, both creatively and in some cases even monetarily. But the point is that it's a very, very it's a large choice to make, and I know even when I was a student, I was in school with doctors and psychologists and athletes and people that never even dreamt about being actors, but they wanted the experience of being in a situation where they really had to open up and reveal themselves, and they wanted to, in a sense, use that to actually build their own self-esteem.
Right.
So I never have ever underestimated the importance of theater and the importance of theater as a community effort, because it is one of the most important things for people, number one, to learn how to communicate, to articulate, and also to express themselves and actually understand that they're okay within themselves, within the world. So, I mean, in that sense, I think it's very, very underestimated of how important it is for people from all different pursuits in life. I honestly think the theater should be made mandatory in all schools. And the reason I say that is because it forces the individual to actually enter the arena and actually be openly criticized for being who he is, what he is, and everything he stands for. And I think that is probably one of the most honest, naked, and, if you will, moral positions that people can be put in. And I think it actually can build a person's self-esteem and their own values by being put in the arena with their own colleagues and comrades who not necessarily may judge them, but will force them to confront themselves. That in itself can build human values. So I really think it's a very important part of our lives that often gets shoved aside. And in fact, the more and more we've become digitalized in every aspect of our lives right now, the theater has gotten less and less important. And I think that that's becoming a smaller issue in our lives, when in fact it should become a greater pursuit.
I think you're.
Does that make any sense? I don't know.
No, it does.
Because I just want to. I think what you're saying, because you use the word naked, I think we have forgotten as a people what it's like to live without a net. We have the security, and we need to get rid of that security. We really,
very well put.
We really need to be naked in that sense. Because it's something I think about a lot. Get rid of the safety net, and it could make all the difference. Especially if you're talking about schools, I couldn't think of a better time period to do it. Yeah,
and I just remember that as a kid, being in with people who were much older than I am, but they wanted that in a way test of being able to put themselves in an arena and actually be openly picked apart. And I really believe it could actually build not just esteem, but build one's own confidence in one's own values, you know.
And it is about self-discovery, and it's also about empathizing with others, which I think is something that's badly needed.
It's so huge. It's a huge issue. It is. I see it especially among young people.
Yes.
I mean, the fragility of a young person's mind and psyche at that time in their lives is monumental, and if they don't have that esteem, and because the public school system, the educational system today is so huge, so overwrought with lack of focus, because teachers are stressed beyond hope. I mean, it's pathetic what goes on in public schools today. And the point is that if they don't get that kind of attention, not necessarily love, but that kind of attention and awareness, it's not serving a young person at all, you know.
Right.
Well, speaking of teachers, when I look at some of the great directors that you've worked with, I always associate them with great teachers, like Lumet or Frankenheimer or Ridley Scott. And I'm wondering how directors like that challenge you and kind of help you bring out your full potential.
You know, it's amazing, but what I've always believed about New York, per se, and places like New York and London, is that there's always been great acting pools that came out of New York and London. And people have always said, oh, look at the actors we produced in the 40s, 50s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever. But the point is that the reason we had great actors that came out of New York is that we had great teachers. And that has never, it's not brought up enough. But in fact, if you go back to the early stages, Sidney Lumet, for example, his uncle was Jacob Adler, who was with the Yiddish theater, who then, emigrated to the group theater. You have people like Stella Adler that went back to Moscow with Clifford Odets. They studied Stanislavski's The Moscow Art Theater. They built, in other words, the American theater. The American theater was built by teachers. Yeah. And when you're with people like Sidney Lumet or Frankenheimer, who was a different school altogether because he was the school of hard knocks, Ridley Scott was just a photography genius as a boy. He was a genius photographer as a kid. So that you have the three different people there. But like Sidney Lumet is a true intellectual. Frankenheimer was a bit of an intellectual himself, but he actually was a filmmaker that actually failed and succeeded constantly because of the tremendous risks that he put himself at with film. But the point is that all those men have a seedling of teaching genius within them. But in fact, I mean, in America and London, what gave birth to great actors in the acting community was the phenomenal teaching energy that existed in these communities. And I mean, I know there's great teachers around today as well. But I mean, when I was a young actor, I mean, you always knew that there were mentors such as Lee Strasberg, Uta Hagen, Sanford Meisner, Mira Rostova, whom I studied with for 25 years. I mean, there were legends around that you could go to actually, listen to and watch and observe. And the point is that you cannot underestimate the energy of those people and what they gave and what they fostered. They are the, if you will, they are the godparents, if you will, of so many actors. And you only have to go back and look in their bios to find out just how influential, say, 10, 20, 30 people were to the entire world.
Well, they've nurtured the greatest actors we've had the past 30, 40 years and beyond. Yeah. Tell me about, Jerry, actually, you had a question about some of the roles that Mr. Assante.
You have played some of the most iconic roles in your career. You played Bugsy Siegel, you played Mike Hammer, and and I just want to know and John Gotti, probably the quintessential John Gotti performance. As far as I'm concerned, when I think of Gotti, that's what I think of. That
Thank you very much.
I really like that movie. We all liked that movie, actually, in my family. We thought it was very well done and very accurate.
Makes you think. Makes you think about the people in your life. And I think of Neil. And if he was sitting there right now, what he'd say to me, he'd say, John, what's it about? What's life about? You don't go through it as a man's man. You say, suck it up. Take the fall. Do the time. That's made you who you are. That makes you what you are. How long have we been around this thing of ours? This Cosa Nostra. 120 years. I mean, what's it about? It's about the rules. Parameters. When you take the beating for the friend, you don't run, you don't lay down. You don't betray who you are. What you are.
Self-esteem.
Self-esteem is basic. You pick it up on the street. That goes with the street. You got to remember Angie here. I love this guy. I loved him. And he was stupid. He never listened to me. He always wanted the goddamn dope money. He never rolled. You know that? He never rolled. My brother Gene, Joey DeMig, they don't roll. They're doing 1,000 years now. They don't roll. They don't rat white. That's the rule. You don't break. You don't rat. Basic rules. Gives you a little power, right? not the kind of power these feds have. God forbid, right? God forbid we pull their chain in public, right? Fucking dress better than them, they take it personal, like it's a fucking vendetta, right? They're supposed to act better than the rest of us. Just want me to be something I wasn't even born to be.
And I just want to know, because you're watching recently, like American Gangster and also Hoffa, what attracts you to this tough guy persona?
You know what? I tell you something. It's like I entered the back door backwards. I don't know. The thing is, I don't know. I mean, I was basically, as a young person, I was quite not even into that persona or those kind of characters. If you go back and look at my earlier films, but in fact, when I did start to be asked to play roles like Mike Hammer and stuff, it just, the amount of material that came my way was quite shocking in that genre.
Right.
And actually some of the better scripts I got were of that genre. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I was around a long time before I even did a film like Q&A. I was around forever. I was 39 years old when I did Q&A. Right. You know, and then Gotti, I think I was 46. I mean, those roles came to me much later, but in fact, I think it was just because the material, if you look at the scripts, they're phenomenal. I mean, the Q&A was written by Edwin Torres, who was the former Supreme Court Justice of Manhattan, and it was recrafted by Sidney Lumet. Gotti was written by Steve Shagan and Vincent Patrick, two of the best writers that ever were in the film industry. So I'm saying the material that I was given, Mike Hammer was written by Mickey Spillane and then recrafted by Larry Cohen. But the point is, the material I was given was superb. Right. And I predicate most of anything I do, and believe me, I've done my share of clunkers. But the point is that just to make a living. But the point is that script to me is everything. Mm-hmm. And when you're working with writers of that kind of caliber, I mean, it's a dream. It's a dream come true. And if you go back, even if you go back to early Hollywood in the last 50 years, look at any of the great genre gangster films. They're beautifully written films.
They are, absolutely.
You cannot ever underestimate the writing, in that there'd be many actors who could succeed in those films because the writing is so good.
Mm-hmm. And the characters are so rich. I mean,
they are.
These characters that Jerry mentioned. I mean, there's so much to absorb yourself in with these guys.
Yeah, and it's I mean, it was a fabulous circumstance to do that script with Sidney Lumet. Mm-hmm. You know, but again, to me, script is ironclad. I mean, it's what drives me. It's what I look for. And the truth is, if I told you how many scripts I have to read through to get to one that I even want to remotely gamble on, it's unbelievable. I mean, you cannot believe the amount of material you have to pour through to find something and say, wow, this guy hit this right on the nose, you know?
Well, speaking of rich and surprising characters, your character in The Line definitely is a surprising turn. And I'm wondering how the project came to you.
It came totally out of the blue. Arliss Fraser contacted me about it, and when I read it, and what attracted me to The Line is that basically almost all the characters in the film are playing a role. It's a very interesting film. It's about deep cover operatives who are actually trying to move in this very murky, dark, really brutal world effectively. And I thought it was very intelligently written. I thought it was a very bleak, unromanticized look at those kind of men that go into that kind of world with certain expectations and have them completely shattered.
Yeah.
This is happening to a lot of young men today that are in Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, this is the real reality of that kind of world is not unlike the reality of what's happening now in Afghanistan. I mean, it is brutal. And the thing is that what I liked about the script is that it explored in a way the emotional desolation of a choice that somehow men in their own macho way romanticize. Yeah. And if you look at all the characters in that, they're all incredibly disillusioned men. Yes. They're shattered. They're all shattered men. And I thought it was an interesting piece of writing. I know there's R. Ellis Frazier is the son of a U.S. Army general. So I think Frazier has a very keen insight into this world. It's not something it's just he's writing off the top of his head. He really has been around that world. Mm-hmm. And we had him on the we had him on the show, and he did he open up about that at all? He did. He talked a little bit about that. He also talked about loving you. So he's crazy about you, as we all are. Yeah, we are. Thank you, Roma. It's a great film, and it does stand out because it is about something, and it's eye-opening and it's intelligent. And all you have to do is see the cast that was assembled to know that this is a quality piece of work. What a cast! Yeah, it's a beautiful cast, and it was a great privilege to be with everybody. And again, I mean, I just thought there was a vulnerability to the writing that you don't usually see in films that, this could be done a completely different way too, but I think because of the sensitivity of the people involved in it, it becomes a more vulnerable story. Yeah. Do you have take The Line, for instance, or another project if you'd like, is there a moment that you can think of, a kind of aha moment when you know that you have that character? Well, I mean, certainly in film, every now and then you might be able to tap into something that you didn't know about, a certain resonance maybe you found, and that certainly is a beautiful experience. The thing I'm inclined, the one thing that actors, as you go through your life as an actor, the one thing you want is to be evoked, because basically the more you work at acting, you know that you have a certain amount of responsibility. You have to carry a role. That comes with the territory. That's your job. But the point is that you scream inside to be evoked by some voice that speaks to you, whether it's a director or even the tiniest piece of direction that just taps something inside of you that you didn't know was that secretive or unexplored. Yeah. And when somebody can give you that, to go into something within yourself that's a voice within yourself that's not been explored, even for a moment, it's very beautiful because you're experiencing a vulnerability about yourself that you didn't know was there. And that is the thing I think all genuine actors inside are screaming for and do not get enough of. Because in the creative world we're in today, things are moving so fast and at such lightning speed that more often than not, you don't find that experience. And you hear of certain directors like Mike Lee and some directors that'll work on a project for 6 months. It's because they want to get to that stuff. Right. And more often than not, even the speed at which they finally have to work anyway, they never get to the stuff anyway. But they are grappling with the process purposely because they want to get that stuff, and that's the hardest stuff to get. It's that moment of transcendence that you're talking about. Right? Yeah, then that's what all actors dream about, But again, it certainly helps to be with someone who's aware enough to be able to tap into that transcendence, and that takes a big head and a patient head, and also somebody who has tremendous soul and tremendous observance about life. Yes. I always am a little disillusioned that in Hollywood generally they're knocking guys out of the loop once they're in their 40s and 50s, when in fact, if you go back into the history of Hollywood and look at the directors like John Ford, John Huston, Howard Hawks, all these guys, including people like Frankenheimer, they hit their stride in their 50s and 60s. That's right. They really hit their stride because, in fact, it takes a lifetime to be able to synthesize a moment.
But the MBAs running the studios don't understand that. Those guys in their 20s don't understand that.
Yeah, that life itself, the experience of life, to be able to synthesize a moment to say, you know what, we don't need this, this, and this. What we need is that light in the corner with that man sitting in the chair over there. And that's the whole proscenium.
Yeah.
And the point is that that's the synthesis of life experience. And that I think is what makes the film world and the theater world so interesting. To me, it's all about how much a person has lived.
That's just it. And what do they want to say? And a lot of times the younger directors, they don't know what they want to say.
Yeah, what if a 20-year-old or a 20, you don't have the experience yet really till you're in your 40s, 50s.
Yeah, there's very few that you meet that have a special intuition or gift. Very, very rarely, you know. Mm-hmm. I shot a film in Romania 2 years ago called California Dream, and I worked with this young Romanian director who sadly was killed right after we made the film. And he was 27 years old, and he was a genius.
He was killed?
He was killed right after we made the film.
That film got the best review I've read in the New York Times. I think it came out finally in this country earlier this year.
Yeah.
That film got a superb review. Oh God.
It was very sad, but that kid had genius, and it was so rare. But I knew him for quite a while, and when we finally made the film, the film was made for nothing in Romania. But the point is that his vast understanding of human nature for such a young person was so rare. I mean, just really rare. That was one of the few times I worked with a young person that I thought, this kid's got it in spades.
Right.
But again, I mean, it's just a thing. But in answer to your question, I mean, it is an issue. It always disturbs me that it's sometimes a lifetime of experience, or those are the people that can really evoke those transcendent moments.
Yeah. And then the line is the closing night film of the New York International Latino Film Festival. And before I let you go, let me ask you about the film festival experience and your thoughts on the value of film festivals.
Well, last October I was given the privilege of being the president of the jury at Moldoist in Ukraine, which is the International Film Festival of Ukraine, and I watched 68 films in 1 week from all over the world. 40 of them were medium films, about 40 of them were medium, about 10 were shorts, and 10 were features. But the point is that the relevance of the film festival itself is that it's a cultural platform where the international community really finally has a voice. And what I was really, really taken with, especially over in that part of the world, is that the films that I voted for the most were coming out of Afghanistan, Iran, Serbia, Croatia, Russia, because the issues that people, one of the films was actually a Muslim film that came out of, I believe, Serbia. But the point is that the issues that they were grappling with were so critical, were so important, were so urgent and current that a Hollywood film at that festival would have withdrawn itself because it would have no proscenium. These films were about really important human issues that were, tremendously at stake. And the film that I remember voting for was a young girl named Hana Makbalbouf from Iran and Afghanistan, in a film called Buddha Collapse from Shame, about the children in Afghanistan that are manipulated by the Taliban. Absolutely shocking, terrifying film, all performed by 3-year-old kids that she directed. And, completely Oscar-worthy. But the point is that the purpose of a film festival is the cultural relevance of the voices within it. You have a very good film festival at Lincoln Center, the Human Rights Film Festival. Some of the films that come out of that festival are just mind-blowing. And I'm not knocking, the more commercial festivals such as Cannes and the big festivals that we have here in Toronto, whatever. I'm not at all, but I'm just saying that the the power of the film festival around the world when you see them coming from places where there is no voice, where you have completely unobserved talent. When they finally get that moment and they get that platform and they take it, it's mind-blowing. Well, I mean, it's just a mind-blowing experience because you realize, my God, I didn't know that there were so many incredible, relevant stories that will never, ever be seen in a theater because no distributor is going to risk whether or not they're going to get an audience. The only miracle we have today is YouTube and the fact that it may go to DVD and get a global audience.
Yeah, I mean,
because most of those films that I saw will never be seen.
And that's a shame because they're films that the makers feel a tremendous urge to make.
Yeah.
They have to be made, and they have to be seen, too, and I think that these festivals are most valuable for those kinds of films.
I'm still waiting for California Dreaming. I mean, I've just heard nothing but great things about this film, and it's sadly something that's not going to be, you know...
Yeah, and oddly enough, it actually did well in Europe for what it was, and it could have run here, but they were afraid to distribute it. But again, I think the relevance of the film festival in general that I've experienced is that it gives a voice to people that will probably be never heard again. And the beauty of it is that it also shows in film the imagination that people have. It's just staggering what the medium is capable of. So I mean, to me, and I'm not saying, by the way, that there should be a film festival in every town in America, but I do believe that the ones that I've attended, have incredible. To me, there will always be unforgettable experiences because of what I was exposed to.
Well, let me tell you, I get so, or we both do, we get so excited and so passionate about discussing this art form that we love so much, like we've done with you tonight. We can talk to you forever, let me tell you.
We really could.
Well, we're crazy about you. I told everyone that, I'm speaking to Armand Assante tonight, and everybody just went crazy. They all love you.
No, thank you.
But I appreciate your time so much.
It was a great pleasure for me as well. And anytime you want to rap, man, call me up. I'll be happy to talk to you.
All right, buddy. Let's do it.
All right.
Hey, wonderful. Thank you.
Bye-bye, sir.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.